يديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا أخي ووسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم آتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي وبضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحمتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا هرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس ويطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضحية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا ربي يتأذن لي أن أحبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام يخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضحية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فيها تأذن لي يا رسول الله. فقال رسول الله عليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحي عليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل بيتي ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبي واصطفاني بالرسالة النجي ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافله أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلي أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفازوا شيعتنا ورب الكعبة.
اللهم صل على محمد
بر محمد وآل محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبي واصطفاني بالرسالة النجي ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله حما ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غما ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجة. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
I would like to invite Mustafa Ali to come and recite a brief manqabat or salam. Or Muhammad Ali Muhammad, salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
By Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat.
Allahumma salli ala
یا علی لب پہ میرے صبح و مسا رہتا ہے، یا علی لب پہ میرے صبح و مسا رہتا ہے، یا علی لب پہ میرے صبح و مسا رہتا ہے، جام کوثر میرے ہونٹوں سے لگا رہتا ہے، جام کوثر میرے ہونٹوں سے لگا رہتا ہے، جس کے چہرے پہ خوشی نام علی سے آئے، جس کے چہرے پہ خوشی نام علی سے آئے، اس کا چہرہ دم آخر بھی کھلا رہتا ہے، اس کا چہرہ دم آخر بھی کھلا رہتا ہے، یا علی لب پہ میرے صبح و مسا رہتا ہے، آتی رہتی ہے سماعت میں سلونی کی صدا، آتی رہتی ہے سماعت میں سلونی کی صدا، علم کے شہر کا دروازہ کھلا رہتا ہے، علم کے شہر کا دروازہ کھلا رہتا ہے، تاج اور تخت کے مالک اسے کرتے ہیں سلام، تاج اور تخت کے مالک اسے کرتے ہیں سلام، میرے مولا کے جو قدموں میں پڑا رہتا ہے، میرے مولا کے جو قدموں میں پڑا رہتا ہے، یا علی لب پہ میرے صبح و مسا رہتا ہے، وقت پرسش میری ہمت کو بڑھانے کے لیے، وقت پرسش میری ہمت کو بڑھانے کے لیے، میرا مولا میری بالی پہ کھڑا رہتا ہے، میرا مولا میری بالی پہ کھڑا رہتا ہے. اے منافق میں نصیری کو برا کیسے کہوں. اے منافق میں نصیری کو برا کیسے کہوں. میرے دل میں بھی نصیری کا خدا رہتا ہے. میرے دل میں بھی نصیری کا خدا رہتا ہے. یا علی لب پہ میرے صبح و مسا رہتا ہے. کیوں کہیں ہم رضی اللہ تعالی عنہ, کیوں کہیں ہم رضی اللہ تعالی عنہ. یہ وہ کہتے ہیں خدا جن سے خفا رہتا ہے. یہ وہ کہتے ہیں خدا جن سے خفا رہتا ہے. پورے قرآن میں اے حافظ قرآن بتا, پورے قرآن میں اے حافظ قرآن بتا. نقطہ با جو نکل جائے تو کیا رہتا ہے. نقطہ با جو نکل جائے تو کیا رہتا ہے. یا علی لب پہ میرے صبح و مسا رہتا ہے. جام کوثر میرے ہونٹوں سے لگا رہتا ہے.
Assalamu alaikum mu'mineen. Thank you for attending today's very special session. With this, I would like to invite Islam Qibla Maulana Raza Hussain Zaidi Sahab to come to the speaker's table. For Muhammad wa Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'd like to invite Brother Umar and Guraya Sahab also to the chair, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
نعرہ تکبیر.
Allahu Akbar.
نعرہ رسالت.
Ya Rasulullah.
حیدری.
Ya Ali.
حیدری.
Ya Ali.
آواز بلند صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
We can give this to Zain. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let me thank all of you for coming here, mashallah. I'm very happy to see you guys. Zain, Ali Shirazi, you know, the nice young man, and all of the fine young men who are sitting here, and the young boys. I'm very happy to see you here. I'm very excited to, you know, introduce you, Brother Umar, to you. Maybe it's going to be the first and the last time when I'll be introducing someone and say that I'm happy to introduce Umar to you, who will be talking about Shiism and also the differences amongst it. And let me introduce Brother Umar. I've known him for the past roughly like what, 11 or 12 years, I guess. I was a resident alim in North England in Sheffield, in Hyderabad, and that's the center he used to regularly come and visit, and he was a young man studying in the universities. His background is that he was born and raised in a Deobandi family. His father is, by the way, one of the very nice ulama of Deoband. And he studied in the Hausa and the school of Deoband. And because he was very sharp in his studies in the school, in his college, universities, and everywhere, and also simultaneously he was studying in the madrasa of Deoband as well. He started debating lots of other people from different religions. That's the story he had told me like years ago. And engage with them, you know, like Christians. He would just pick up a Bible and, you know, try to prove Islam from the Bible. And he was successful in doing that. And he would win all of the debates. And at the end of the day, someone talks to him and he says, why shouldn't you do that with the Shias as well? You know, look at their books and try to prove Sunnism from the Shia books, right? So once he opens the Shia books, he sees that he's unable to prove the authenticity of the Sunni madhab from the Shia books. So he goes back to the Sunni books and tries to see the Sunnism in it, but he finds that the Shia religion is proved from the Sunni books. So that was one of the turning points, and also Fadak. So I would want him to continue with his thoughts, and before that I'd like Mr. Guraya to put his thoughts into it as well. Salawat Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
There was Mumni, last night, first time I met Mr. Umar, اور میں بہت سارے آپ جانتے ہیں مجھے لاٹس آف علماء میرے پاس آتے ہیں, میرے پاس ٹھہرتے ہیں, برنگ ہم دا امام بارکا اینڈ لاٹ آف تھنگس. سو جب فرسٹ ٹائم لاسٹ نائٹ میں عمر بھائی کو ملا وہاں پہ, تو آئی واز ریئلی امپریسڈ. مجھے اسٹوری کا پوری کا آئیڈیا نہیں تھا, لیکن قبلہ نے ماشاء اللہ بریفلی ایکسپلین کیا عمر بھائی کی لائف کے بارے میں. سو میں نے میٹ ہم I was first I thought like I'm meeting like any ordinary people or something, but when I met him, I was totally impressed, because I know a couple of ulamas or something, when they like met you in your personal life, they are different, but when they on the member, they are totally different. So when I met Mr. Umar and I spent some time with him, asked about him about his journey and to Shiism. So my بال کھڑے ہو رہے تھے ان کی بات سن کے کہ یار ہاؤ مولا جب کسی کو ہدایت دیتے ہیں, مولا جب کسی کو اپنے پاس بلاتے ہیں, تو کیسے وہ اپنے بندے کو اپنے پاس بلا لیتے ہیں. وہ کہیں پہ بھی ہوں, کہیں پہ بھی رہتے ہوں, لیکن جب وہ مولا جب ان کو بلاتے ہیں اپنے پاس, تو وہ یہ نہیں دیکھتے کہ کیا نام ہے, کہاں پہ رہتے ہیں, کیا ہے. ان کی محبت کو دیکھتے ہوئے وہ اپنے پاس بلا لیتے ہیں. اینڈ جب مجھے عمر بھائی نے بتایا کہ ان کو چینج کس چیز نے کیا, تو بہت چھوٹی سی انہوں نے ایک ورڈ بولا, بی بی سیدہ سلام اللہ علیہ, اللہم صلی علی محمد و آلہ. This one is only one word he said. He said that is the word who bring me into this. So اس کے بعد صبح بھی میں ان کو تھوڑا ملنے کا اتفاق ہوا. صبح میں جب ان کو لے کے آیا, تو جب پہلی پرسنالٹی میں نے اپنی لائف میں دیکھی ہے کہ جو اندر سے اور باہر سے ایک ہے. موسٹلی ہم لوگ جب بات کرتے ہیں تو اندر کچھ اور ہوتا ہے, باہر کچھ اور ہوتا ہے. سم ٹائم ہم تھوڑا سا ایڈوانٹیج بھی لے جاتے ہیں, لیکن ٹو بی آنیسٹ ہی از اے مرر فار اس. یہ ہمارے لیے وہ آئینہ ہے جو ہماری کمیونٹی کے لیے, ہماری آنے والی نسلوں کے لیے ایک بہترین ایک نمونہ ہے جن کو ہمیں فالو کرنا ہے. میں اپنے سب کیڈس سے یہی کہوں گا کہ ان کو غور سے سنیں. جو کویشچن آپ کے دل میں ہے آپ ان سے پوچھیے, they will give you answer. And after that, if they have any your personal question, after that we have 30 minutes separately with him. If you any ایسا question جو آپ نہیں پوچھ سکتے ہیں فرنٹ پہ, ask him. We will provide you email. After that, if you can ask him after 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, you can send him email. He will give you the reply for that. So بہت اختصار سے کام لیتے ہوئے عمر بھائی کا میں اپنے سینٹر کی طرف سے, کینیڈا کی طرف سے دل کی گہرائیوں سے ان کو ہم لوگ ویلکم کہتے ہیں. اور ہماری ریکویسٹ ہوگی ان سے کہ یہ کوشش کیا کریں کہ ہمارے پاس سال میں کوئی چند بار جو ہے نا وہ ضرور آیا کریں, اور آ کے ہمیں جو ہے وہ ہماری کڈس کو, ہماری یہ جو اس وقت کی جو ہماری نسل ہے, ان کو بہت زیادہ ایسے انسان کی ضرورت ہے کہ جو آ کے ہمیں گائیڈنس کر سکیں, جو ہمیں بتا سکیں. تھینک یو ویری مچ. Going to Umar sir.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين, والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبو القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد الفرقان الحميد قوله الحق أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الدين عند الله الإسلام صدق الله العلي العظيم. If we can please recite aloud salawat for the organizers of this I'd like to thank you all for coming here today, and also to Maulana Zaidi Saab, Brother Ijaz, for organizing this session and for giving me the honor to serve you. And I see lots of young faces as well as some older faces, so that's good to see. Today's session, as Maulana Zaidi said, is going to discuss the differences between the two large groups in Islam, Shia and Sunni. We'll also talk a bit about my journey towards the school of Ahlul Bayt, and also there'll be an opportunity to ask questions for all of you. And as Brother Ijaz said, if some of you want to ask something further, the time doesn't permit, then we can discuss that by email or in some other method, inshallah. So, we're in 2024 now, so Happy New Year from me. And we have 1.9 billion people in the world who identify as Muslims. So Islam is followed by 1.9 billion people. What does this word Islam mean? So I'm going to ask this. Anybody have any suggestions? What does Islam mean? The word Islam. Yes? That's one suggestion, please.
Take them up.
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace, okay. Anybody else want to say anything? What does the word Islam mean? We've got a brother over there.
Submission.
Submission. Brother, you want to say something? So, you were close, young man, but actually the brother just now spoke was correct. Islam means submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to surrender and submit. It comes from the root word silm in Arabic, which literally means surrender and submission. In Islam, we have two major groups, Sunni and Shia. We also have another sect known as Ibadiyya, which are present in Oman and Algeria, but we won't go into them. They're the remnants of the group that was called the Khawarij, but they're not relevant to our discussion today. I read a verse of the Quran just now, which is from Surah Al Imran, and that's verse number 19. And this is a verse where Allah says, indeed, the only religion acceptable in His eyes is Islam. So we've got to this conclusion that Islam is the true religion. And all previous prophets, from Adam to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they were all actually Muslims because they were all submitting to the will of God. Jesus was a Muslim. Moses was a Muslim. Abraham was a Muslim. The word Christianity, by the way, came much after Isa alayhi salam. It actually came from his enemies. And the same with the word Jew came after Musa alayhi salam. So are all Muslims the same? Clearly they're not. So around 80 to 85% of the global Muslim population identify as Sunni or Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And then we have 15 to 20% identifying as Shia or Shiat Ali. So what does the word Shia or Shiat Ali mean? So the word Shia in Arabic literally means a party of or partisan or follower of. So referring to people who follow Imam Ali, have loyalty towards Imam Ali alayhi salam. The word Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah literally refers to the people who follow the tradition and the congregation. The word Shia, by the way, is very early. You can find hadith, you can find verses of the Quran which actually mention the word Shia. The word Sunni is not found in the Holy Quran. Neither is it found in the traditions of the Holy Prophet if you go farther back. We've all heard of the hadith. There's going to be 73 sects in this ummah. There were 72 amongst the Christians and 71 amongst the Jews. And only one of them will be saved. So it's up to us. We have to find out where the truth stands. We can't just follow what our parents have taught us. And I'm saying this to all of you youngsters in here. Just because you're born into a family doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean Islam's right because you're born a Muslim. You need to go and be convinced yourself. So we're going to talk about the main theological differences between Sunni and Shia Muslims. But before that, I want to talk a bit about my journey. And I think the first time I heard about Shia or Shiism was in 2006. And many of you will remember who are old enough what happened in summer 2006. There was a big political event. There was a big war taking place in the Middle East between Israel and the Lebanese resistance. So the word Shiism was in the news very much so. And I remember being on holiday in Morocco with my family. There was another family who we used to play with. They were also from the UK and they were a Pakistani family because most of the hotel were German and French tourists and we didn't have much in common. So I'm playing with one of the boys there, table tennis, and we're talking about the Sunni Shia issue, and I said to him, yeah, you know, I don't know about these Shias. I've heard many bad things, and they do this, they do that, and the individual who I was playing with, I don't know if he's listening to this, Saif turned around and said to me, well, Umar, I'm Shia. So I felt embarrassed. All these days I've been swimming with you, playing table tennis with you, eating with you, and I could think so badly of you with no reason to do so. And we started discussing. After that, I started asking my father questions. What's the difference between Sunni and Shia? And you know, his answers were very simple. That look, they're all Muslims, but they believe that Hazrat Ali should have been the first Khalifa. We don't believe that, etc., etc. Don't talk about it. No need to go into this. When I left this holiday, I started to do some research. And when you type into Google Shiism, unfortunately, the sites that come up first are what? They're not from our friends. They're from our enemies. And when you have petrodollars, it's very easy to propagate and make propaganda. So you could say I went through a period where I became someone who had animosity or bias towards Shias, and I was somebody, as Maulana said, who would want to bring Shias towards real Islam, as I thought it then, which was Sunni Islam. Some time passed, some years passed, and it was Muharram, I was in college. Some of my Iranian class fellows in college were asking me, so what do you guys do in Muharram? Do you have any commemorations? Do you know what it's about? And I remember telling them, no, not really. I know it's a sad month. Imam Hussain, the grandson of the Prophet, was martyred, but we don't really do anything. We just fast, you know, the 19th, 10th of Muharram. So they said, well, why don't you come with us? We do something called majalis. You should try it out. And I remember thinking at the time, do I go with these guys and see what they do for myself? Because what they do is wrong. They're doing bid'ah, they're doing innovation, and or let me just give them the benefit of the doubt and take up their invitation. So for whatever reason, I took up their invitation and I went. I sat in the majlis, I listened. Obviously, when there was azadari taking place, I was standing to one side thinking, what's going on here? Because that was the first time in my life I'd seen that, and with my own eyes. And afterwards, sitting down as we do, having the niyaz, having the food, talking to the people there and starting asking questions. What I realized was, very nice people, I've probably misjudged these people, and maybe I should listen to what they have to say, why they believe what they believe. It's one thing listening, oh, they do this, they do that, they don't believe in the Sahaba, they curse the wives of the Prophet, they don't believe in the Quran, but then going there and listening to their side of the story. Let me be fair. So I started that, started doing research. There was a book I was recommended called Shabbi Peshawar Nights, which I recommend you to read. Maybe some of you have read, and then I was guided. And I think that a big turning point was this book, and then I was guided, because this is a book written by a former Sunni scholar, Muhammad Tijani from Tunisia, and it's his life story, how he came to Shia Islam. And it's very interesting. I mean, I remember reading this book and being hooked to it, staying awake all night till the early hours and not being able to sleep, just reading it. But as Brother Ijaz said, really the definitive turning point was reading about what happened between Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, Muhammad, and the first Khalifa. Because from a Sunni perspective, you have to remember, he's the best friend of the Prophet. He loves him, he was his father-in-law and close to him, and she's the daughter of the Prophet. So when I read in Bukhari, where it mentions, and any of you can find this today, if you go on sunnah.org, Saudi website, you can find this hadith there, if you don't have the copy of Bukhari, that Fatima, daughter of the Prophet, died angry with the first Khalifa. She was buried secretly in the night, and she did not want them to be at her funeral. What's going on here? Isn't he the best friend of the Prophet, and your friends would surely want to be at the funeral of your daughter? Okay, that's point number one. She didn't want them to be there, and she was buried secretly. And she died angry with them. And we know the previous hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari mentions, Fatima is a part of me, whoever angers her, angers me. And the Quran tells us, whoever angers Rasulullah, angers Allah. And whoever angers Allah, Allah's damnation is on them. This is a serious crime. So I'm confused, I'm thinking, what's going on? So then I start reading more, going into all the various differences between the two sects. And as Maulana said, I came to the conclusion that everything the Shia believe can be proven from the books of Ahl Sunnah and from the Quran. This is the beauty of it. When we're talking to Christians, obviously they don't believe in the Quran. I'm not going to talk to you about the Quran because you don't believe in it. I'm going to bring you proof from the Bible. Because that's hujjah upon you. When you're talking to Jewish people, what's hujjah upon them is what they believe, the Old Testament. So me as a Sunni then, it was hujjah upon me when I can find in my own books all the evidences to the conclusion of Shiism. And I think 90% probably of people who become Shia, this incident of Sayyidah Fatima is a turning point for them. I remember Allama Nasir Abbas, maybe many of you have heard of him, has spoken about this. So really from then on things were very clear that this was the right path. Obviously it's not easy to change, it's very hard to change, but Allah guides who He wills. One of the main accusations leveled towards the Shia, so one of the main theological differences is when it comes to the companions of the Prophet. Our brothers in Ahl Sunnah have a belief called Adalat-ul-Sahaba, justice of the companions. That's why you hear them say Radiyallahu an, right? You heard this term, Radiyallahu an. What does Radiyallahu an mean? May Allah be pleased with him. Or Radiyallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her. So they believe all the companions of the Prophet were just and righteous. And their definition of a companion of the Prophet is anybody who died as a Muslim and saw the Prophet. And this definition comes from Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. If anybody wants to know this, who's interested, he's a famous Sunni scholar. So where does the term Radiyallahu an come from? So Surah At-Tawbah, verse number 100, mentioned وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ مِنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَالْأَنصَارِ وَالَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُم بِإِحْسَانٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ. Okay, so I'm just going to read the translation of this verse for you so you understand where. And the forerunners in faith amongst the Muhajirin and Ansar and those that followed them with good conduct, Allah is pleased with him and they are pleased with him. Okay. What is the Shia perspective on the companions? Do Shias really hate all the companions of the Prophet? Do we disregard them? Do we curse them? Or is it different? Actually, the Shia perspective on the companions is more in line with the Quran, because there's verses like that in the Quran praising the companions. But there are also other verses of the Quran which say, وَمِنْ أَهْلِ الْمَدِينَ مَرَضُوا عَلَى النِّفَاقِ, right after this verse. Amongst the people of Medina are hypocrites. لَا تَعْلَمُهُمْ, you don't know them. نَحْنُ نَعْلَمُهُمْ, Allah is telling the Prophet, we know who they are. And there's other verses of the Quran, for example, Surah Munafiqun, who is that about? I don't think that it's about people from the moon. There was definitely people around the Prophet who were hypocrites. And you know, the common cop-out, Maulana, is it was about Abdullah bin Ubay. One guy gets all the blame, Abdullah bin Ubay, but really we know there was a few more than that. They tried to kill the Prophet on multiple occasions. So the Shia perspective, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam has an entire dua praising the companions of the Prophet. There were many thousands of Sahaba who we believe were good people. Just because a handful of them we have problems with doesn't mean we hate them all. That's point number one. There's another verse that's commonly quoted about Bay'atul Ridwan. Allah is pleased with, it's in Surah Al-Fath, لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ. Allah is pleased with those who give bay'ah under the tree. Okay, fine. Allah is pleased with all those people. Does that mean Allah is pleased with them forever? What does the next verse say? فَعَلِمُ اللَّهُ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. God knows what's in their hearts. There were some people who give bay'ah under the tree, believing, yes, Ya Rasulullah, you are Rasulullah. There's others thinking, what can I get out of him when he goes away? There was others thinking, how am I going to get rid of him? One of the people who gave bay'ah under the tree, under the shajara, was known as Abdul Rahman bin Udais. Maybe some of you know the third Khalifa, Uthman ibn Affan, he was killed. So if you look at the books of history, Abdul Rahman bin Udais was the one who said, I stabbed Uthman twice in the heart. One for the sake of God, one for my own personal vengeance against him. So Abdul Rahman bin Udais, radiyallahu an, kills Uthman ibn Affan, radiyallahu an. Does that make any sense? Both of them are going to go to Jannah? The killer and the killer are going to go to Jannah? Let me give you another example. We talked about Sayyidah Fatima. So Fatima al-Zahra radiyallahu anha dies angry with Abu Bakr radiyallahu anha. I mean, this is an interesting Jannah it's going to be, where he hates her and she killed him, and God knows these two went to war with each other. So the Shia perspective is very much consistent with the Quran, that those who truly died as Muslims, as believers, and also who didn't have animosity towards Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, we like them, we're with them. Those who had problems with Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, no, we don't have reverence for them. We don't care who they are, what names they are, because it's not about the names and personalities, it's about their actions. Okay. So we talked about the Sahaba briefly. Again, time is limited, otherwise I would go more into depth in these issues. Let's come to Imama versus Khilafah. Anybody can put their hands up here and tell me what do we mean by Imama? Can anybody tell me what we mean by Imama? Yes.
Can you have the mic, please? Can somebody give it the mic? Turn it on.
By Imam, I think we mean like the successors after the Prophet and after like Imam Ali.
Excellent, excellent. Well answered. So we're talking about divine leadership. So for the Shia, we have a system of Imam where God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, chooses, like He chooses His prophets, He chooses their successors. Our Sunni brothers have a different opinion. They believe that the Prophet left no successor in this world and that it was left for the people to choose. Now, when thinking about this Prophet has taught us how to eat, how to clean ourselves, the rules of marriage, the rules of when you're traveling, every single detail, nothing's been left out. So does it make sense that he would leave this world and not designate his successor, and he would leave his community in misguidance? It doesn't seem to make sense, especially when Allah tells us in the Quran, "Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa." I have appointed you as a Khalifa on this. When talking about Adam alayhi salam and appointing Ibrahim alayhi salam as an Imam, it doesn't seem to be consistent with the Quran. And of course, the famous Hadith al-Ghadir, which we celebrate every year. And many in the Sunni world, by the way, don't have a clue what Ghadir Khum is. I'm telling you from my perspective. I never heard of it, never heard it mentioned once on the minbar. You might get some of our Barelvi, Sufi inclined Sunnis that have a mention of it here and there, but not in the way we understand it. So what is Ghadir Khum? Anybody can tell me what happened at Ghadir? Yeah? Brother over there with the cap on.
So Ghadir was like one of the Prophet's final khutbahs in front of the people where he came to the lake of Ghadir.
Yes.
And he was telling everyone, "Oh people, I appoint Imam Ali as my successor." And that was essentially how he was going to pass on the message from Allah that this is the divine appointment of Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So do Sunnis accept something happened at Ghadir? Or do they deny it at all? Actually they do. It's mutawatir, which means it's so greatly narrated in the books of Ahlul Sunnah that it can't be denied, whether that's in Muslim, whether that's in Tirmidhi, whether it's Muslim Ahmed. So both of us can say we agree, Shia and Sunni, that something happened at Ghadir. What was said at Ghadir? Actually we agree the same thing was said. Man kuntu mawla fa'aliyun mawla. Where does the difference come? The difference is on the word mawla. The word mawla, does it have one meaning? No. It has 25 meanings, approximately. Why would the Prophet say something so vague, you might ask then? Well, actually, he gives the context to it. And this is where the Shia opinion makes sense. Because the Sunnis say, no, Rasulullah, when he said Mawla, he meant friend, because there was an issue between some of the Sahaba and Imam Ali. So he wanted to fix it. Okay. He stopped 100,000 people in the desert, in the middle of the heat, on the way back to Medina, because he wanted to solve a dispute. Okay? Seems to make sense. Doesn't really, does it? I mean, you'd think it would be a bit more of a defining event. So they say the word Mawla means friend. What did the Prophet say before he said, Man kuntu Mawla? There's a verse in the Quran, An-Nabiyyu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim. The Prophet has a greater authority over the believers than themselves. He mentioned this verse and he says, Alastu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim? Do I not have a greater right of authority over you, O mu'mineen, than yourselves? And they said, Bala ya Rasulullah. Yes, you do. So the Prophet is given the context. Whatever wala, authority, means in this verse, it doesn't mean friendship, it means authority. This is what mawla is going to mean. And he says, Man kuntu mawla, fa'aliyun mawla. So actually the Prophet used the word very specifically, so nobody can come back and say, no, he meant this, he meant that, and play word semantics with it. So unfortunately our Sunni brothers try and downplay this event, but in the reality, the more you look into it, it's very clear the Prophet, before passing away, was trying to guide his ummah, to leave them a successor so they will not be astray. And that's where we come to Hadith al-Thaqalain. Hadith al-Thaqalain, by the way, in the Sunni world, is very different to us. And I can tell you, growing up, and going to many massages in different places in the UK, in the Middle East, Pakistan, what would we hear every Friday? Does anybody want to take a guess what the two things were? Quran and Sunnah. So we get told, the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm leaving you two things behind, the Quran and my Sunnah. Every Friday, you go to any Jumu'ah in the world today still, Quran wa Sunnah, Quran wa Sunnah, Quran wa Sunnah. Now nobody's saying we shouldn't follow the Quran and Sunnah, but tell us what the Prophet actually said. Don't play around with the words. Where is the hadith, Quran and Sunnah mentioned? Is it mentioned in Bukhari? No. Is it mentioned in Muslim? No. Is it mentioned in any of the 6 books known as Sihah Sitta that the Sunnis say they're most authentic? No, it's not. Actually, the place you'll find it is in a book called Muwatta Imam Malik. Not in the 6 books, so it's a book written by Imam Malik. Hadith itself is mursal. So mursal means there's a disconnection in the chain. And it's a single, so there's the Sahabi who's supposed to narrate it from the Prophet and then to the next person. In this chain, the Sahabi is missing. So it's a mursal hadith, and it's a weak hadith. But in the other books, in the 6 books we mentioned, we find another version of the hadith mentioned multiple times, where the Prophet says, إِنِّي تَارِكُمْ فِيكُمُ الثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَةِ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي. I am leaving you 2 things behind. The first of those is the book of Allah, and the second is my itra, my household, my Ahlul Bayt. So you've got to think here, why is there a suppression of the truth? Don't all these people know this? I remember discussing once with a Sunni brother about this and showing him this hadith in Sahih Muslim. He was shocked. He was like, initially he was saying, oh, you're lying, this can't be true. So I showed him it. So I said, there's 2 things here. Either the scholars you follow are ignorant, so you shouldn't follow them anyway if they're ignorant. You should follow somebody who's learned. Or they know this and they're deliberately not telling you. They're suppressing the truth from you. That's even more dangerous, because then they're deliberately misguiding you. And I think that's unfortunately the case for many of them. This hadith is clear, it's authentic, it's multiply narrated, and it's being hidden from the masses, because then they'll come toward Ahlul Bayt. As a Sunni, you hardly hear about Ahlul Bayt. The most you'll get mentioned is about Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain being little kids around the Prophet. We don't hear about the kids when they grew up, because the kids are then having wars with mommy. You know, we're talking about the Battle of Jamal here. The kids, Karbala happens. Karbala, of course, is hardly mentioned in the Sunni world. I think in the last 15, 20 years we've had more of it mentioned because of the fear that people are going to go to Shia Majalis if they don't hear about Karbala from them. Another issue of theology that we have a difference in is infallibility. What do I mean by isma or infallibility? That we believe all the prophets of Allah are protected from any sin or error. And also the 12 Imams, Sayyidah Fatima, so the Ahlul Bayt are also ma'soomeen. Now you might ask, what's the proof for that? The proof is Surah Al-Ahzab, Ayat al-Tafhir, as you all know, where Allah says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Now some people try and say, well, no, this verse doesn't refer to Ali, Fatima, Hassan and Hussein. It refers to the wives of the Prophet. It's an interesting one. Now, they do have a point. The previous verses in this surah are all related to the wives of the Prophet. But if you look at this verse, again, we haven't got so much time to go into it, but the gender of the verse changes. So before you've got وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ, which is feminine in Arabic. Kunna. So they're all addressing the ladies. But in this verse, ankum, for example. Ankum means males and females, a group of, a mixed group. Secondly, we have a hadith in Sahih Muslim from Salama, who's a wife of the Prophet, where she talks about the revelation of this verse of Ayat al-Tahir. And she mentions that it was only the Prophet, Sayyidah Fatima, Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain there. So she says to the Prophet, can I not join? He says, no, you're in a good position, but you're not part of this group. So this is an exclusive group. These are a purified group. And even from a logical perspective, if the Prophet wasn't infallible, why should I follow him? If he's just like me, if he can sin, if he can do things just like I can, how do I know when to follow him? Why is Allah asking me to follow him? So it makes sense that he should be infallible just like other prophets of God, and all those who succeed him, who are going to guide me to the truth, must be infallible, so that they always guide me to the truth. Because how do I know then when they're telling me something to follow and not to follow? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. We'll talk about some practices that get mentioned, and I think a lot of the youngsters here, maybe in school or in college, or and even the elders amongst us, would have had these accusations leveled at them. So people sometimes have an issue with the way Shias pray. We know we're allowed to combine the prayers, and our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah pray at 5 separate times. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. In fact, it's actually better, if we're very frank with ourselves. What's the proof for combining the prayers? Is there any proof for combining the prayers from their books? Yes, there is. If you look at Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, you'll find a number of narrations, most notably from Ibn Abbas, where he mentions the Prophet prayed Dhuhr and Asr together, and Maghrib and Isha together, and this was not in a state of fear or traveling or when there was rain. And the explanation is given as to why he did that, because he wanted ease on his ummah. Okay? 3 of the Sunni schools of thought, they have 4 schools of thought, allow combination when you're traveling, when it's raining, when you're sick, or if there's some sort of fear. But we're talking now about in a normal situation, like we commonly do. So if you ever have this accusation hurled at you, I can give you the references afterwards if you want. There are clear proofs in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, that the Prophet did this not on one occasion, on multiple occasions. Another one, why do you pray to this stone? Has anyone heard that? Why do you pray on this rock? Why do you worship this rock? Referring to the turba that we would prostrate on. Sajdagar, as it's known. Now, when did the Prophet ever pray on carpets? Did he? No, he didn't. So when somebody tells you you're worshipping a stone, oh, tell them why you're worshipping the carpet. Why do you face the Qibla? Are you worshipping the Kaaba? No, we're not worshipping the Kaaba. The Kaaba is a direction for us to pray at, for unification. Secondly, we find many ahadith in the books of Ahlul Sunnah again where the Prophet had marks of clay on his forehead when he'd come up from sujood, meaning that he was praying on earth. Secondly, we have a narration in Sahih Bukhari where it mentions the earth has been made as a place of prostration for you. The earth. Ard. Clearly the word ard is mentioned in Arabic, which means the earth. Ashura, another one. Why do you guys hit yourselves? Why do you guys beat yourselves? Why do you commemorate Ashura every year? I'm sure you've heard that one. Now, I'm not going to deny it. This is sometimes the martyrdom and self-flagellation isn't the easiest topic to cover, but we can certainly prove from Sunni books that Rasulullah cried for Imam Hussain even before his Shahada. There are many narrations that he cried every time Angel Jibreel came and mentioned to him what's going to happen to Imam Hussain. And even he gave some khaq-i-shifa, some clay from Karbala to Salma and told her, Ya Salma, when this turns red, know that Hussain has been martyred. So the Prophet cried for Imam Hussain. This is the sunnah of the Prophet to cry for Imam Hussain. And we have many traditions from Ahlul Bayt, from the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, that mourning for Imam Hussain is very important. And the thawab, every tear that you shed, how many sins are forgiven for doing so. Taraweeh. Anybody know here what Taraweeh is? Or Namaz Taraweeh? Anybody have any idea?
You know? Do you have the mic?
So it's mostly for it's a prayer that started with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Ramadan, where he would start reciting in the mosque verses of the Quran and try and complete the Quran. And essentially he noticed that people would start joining him, and that's when he kind of disbanded Taraweeh and told everyone that it's not an obligation. I'm not going to read Taraweeh anymore because I don't want it to become an obligation on my ummah. Now our Sunni brothers, they continue to do it in congregation every Ramadan. But I know within the Shia it's not as popular, and if it is, then it's preferred to do it alone. Because I know Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam told us that he told us that for the most part, non-wajib prayers should not be prayed in congregation. They should be prayed alone.
Yeah. So almost there. Very good answer. Taraweeh is basically, for us, it's namaz isha. We have a prayer in the latter part of the night. It's preferred to pray it. And it's prayed individually. Now, what Ahlul Sunnah have ended up doing is, the Prophet, for example, in his lifetime, never prayed this prayer in congregation. I think in Bukhari, the hadith you're referring to mentions that he was praying on his own and people started joining him, and then on the third night he told them to leave him. What happened in the second Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab's time, he saw groups of people praying in the mosque. So what he did was he thought it was a good idea to put them all together behind one Imam, and he even mentioned what a good bid'ah this is. But the Shia perspective is, well, whatever the Prophet did, that's binding. You can't come after the Prophet and tell us what to do or add things to the religion. The religion has already been completed. Whatever's been made permissible has already been finalized. So our issue is not that Salatul Taraweeh is not something nice, it's not good to read the Quran or pray, but praying in congregation for non-obligatory prayers is the issue. Only the obligatory prayers are prayed in congregation. So you can answer if anybody asks you that. We do pray Taraweeh. We pray it in Namaz Shab, and it's very highly recommended, but we don't pray in congregation. And there's many other practices we can look at as well, but I think we're going to open the floor for questions after a short break, yeah? And yeah, we'll take it from there. Sure.
And if there are any questions, even from the girls' side, the young girls there, the boys there, if you got any questions for Brother Omar?
We have 15 minutes for your questions, if anybody has. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
can you please give the gentleman the mic, please?
Assalamu alaikum. Mashallah, very good effort. One of the main difference, especially in Shia, is the fidak. So did you make some research on that and you had to put some light on that? And because Sunnah says this is not correct.
Yeah.
So what is your research on that?
Yeah, I think I alluded to it earlier that I saw that Sayyida Fatima died angry with the first Khalifa, and obviously then the issue of Fadak came up, and for time purposes I didn't go too much into it, but yes, I did look into it, and it was clear that she went asking for her right and she was denied. Now, let's make something clear here. Fadak was not her inheritance, it was given to her during the lifetime of the Prophet. Okay? Fadak was male fai. You know, there's two types, male ghanima, male fai. One is that you win from war, and the other one is it's given. They gave Fadak to the Holy Prophet, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed him, because the sacrifice that Sayyidah Khadija made for this religion, he instructed the Prophet to give this to Sayyidah Fatima. So it was very clear, she was given this land. She only used the argument of inheritance because they denied that she was given this. They said, no, this doesn't belong to you, this is not yours. So she said, okay, if you're saying it doesn't belong to me, this is my father's, I should get it as inheritance. See, it's very clear here. Either one is right or the other is right. It's clear that she went. You can't deny that she went asking for it. And I think there was an incident a couple of years ago, maybe some of you remember, Asif Jalali in Pakistan. You remember the incident where he clearly said Fatima Zahra was wrong. She was on khata, and he was attacked from many of his own community. But he was being honest. I rate him. You're being honest. That's what you really believe. You believe she was wrong, and you believe he was right. But for us, she's a Siddiqa. She is the truthful one. So wherever she is, we'll be with her. Whoever it is against her. That's the difference between us and the other Muslims. Wherever Ali is, we're with him, because he's with the truth. Wherever Fatima is, we're with her because she's with the truth. We don't care who she's up against. We're with her till the end.
Anyone else?
I have one more question if you don't mind.
Sure.
When you converted to Shiism, definitely you will face a lot of issues, challenges with your family and your friends. So how you face them, how you convince them even?
Yeah. So yeah, of course, I remember many of my former teachers instructed people not to talk to me about religion, or not to talk to me at all actually. So there was people who actually kept a distance from me and whatnot, and there were some family issues. Alhamdulillah, the family issues were not too bad. But I think there was definitely like a social type of boycott from some people because of the misunderstandings. Now, alhamdulillah, some of those friends actually ended up becoming Shia themselves, believe it or not. That's from Allah, you know, that's something that He guides who He wills. But I think every time people see something different or for fear of change, they do this kind of behavior. And to me, it revealed that there is something wrong with them. They're scared. Because if you're convinced in your faith, you don't mind talking to others. In fact, if you feel somebody's gone astray, you should try and go and help them. So, alhamdulillah, we can be confident we're on the truth. We have nothing to hide. We talk to people from all faiths. We have books from other Muslims in our mosque. You probably see that all the time in our libraries. And I think it's very important that we try and maintain good relations with others, even if they're bad towards us. And that's the sunnah of our Imama.
Assalamu alaikum. Good to see you in this part of the world. Ali Jafri from the area. How are you?
I'm very well. Nice to see you.
Keeping yourself well maintained, I guess. Okay, quick question. Very interesting. You brought it up. I would talk about the light bulb that you mentioned when you started actually thinking about the Shiism and starting the research bit. But you interestingly mentioned you met a family in Morocco, Pakistani, and later on the Iranians. So I know a lot of youth here now in this part of the world, they are observing, we interact in schools, a lot of Ahl-Sunnah, brothers. What would you advise sort of approach and methodology that we should take to do the same what that Iranians did with you, to invite them to the majlis? I think that's the turning point for me, because other than, the even pre-research part, you were invited to come to the majlis, and that's how you started thinking about it.
Yes.
There's the why question that you brought. So what would you advise us, the youngsters, how to approach our brother to invite him to the Imam Baraka to come with us?
Sure.
How should we take that approach?
Sure. I think the best answer, Ali, to your question is from the Quran, "Udu ila sabili rabbika bil hikma wal maw'izati al hasana wajadilhum billati hi ahsan." Allah says, and invite them to the way of your Lord in the best of ways, in a maw'izati al hasana, in a very nice way, and with wisdom. Whenever we're talking to people, we represent, whether we like it or not, our faith. So when people look at you, look at me, look at others, and we're behaving in a good way, they think, you know what, these Shias are not so bad. Imam Sajjad says, "Kun zinan lana." He says, be an adornment for us. So if we have good akhlaq, I think that's the most important thing. We are honest people, we are truthful, we have good conduct. When we do invite people to join us and talk to us, they'll be more likely to come. But if they see we're rude, we don't pray, we don't fast, we use bad language, we don't seem sincere, then they'll be pushed away from us. We have to attract people towards us. And I believe, even then, maybe you might ask somebody to come to the majlis and they won't. But there's more chance of them coming if you had good conduct with them.
And just to supplement, the conduct you mentioned, do you really believe the way, we are playing around on the internet right now, let's say for Hassani Yari these days, so mostly we are very excited about manazara and debating and trying to prove that the other person is wrong. Do you really think it's actually working?
But different people think in different ways. And whilst I may not agree with some of the views of Hassan al-Ayari, it's working for some people. And maybe for most people, munazara isn't the best way. I think a lot of these munazaras are a waste of time. It's better to actually get the feeling from that person to want to do something themselves. Forcing it down their throat, just trying to prove them wrong, isn't going to be the best way. But I don't think you can give a answer on this, because I've seen people come to this faith in different ways. Sometimes it's from munazaras. Sometimes it is, seriously.
You mentioned Peshawar night.
Yeah, Peshawar night. Sometimes it's from small things, such as somebody's action, somebody's kindness. And other times, really, I think it's from really God. You can't even put something in somebody's heart and something happens and changes in their life. So I don't think we can give a clear-cut answer. You take the good from all people and leave the bad. That's what I think.
Can you give the mic to Zan, please? Thank you. Zan. You want it? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a little personal. I wanted to ask you what kind of a strong Sunni Muslim you were before you converted, and how did you battle yourself?
Sure. What type of a strong Sunni Muslim I was, I don't know if you mean in terms of practice or belief, but certainly if I heard somebody...
because it's about the belief.
Yeah, if I heard somebody questioning anything related to 1, 2, 3, or any of the wives of the Prophet, that would make me very angry. I remember seeing some clips of, I'm not going to mention the name, of a Shia cleric who was actually sending curses upon some of the revered personalities by Ahl Sunnah, and that really made me angry, I remember at the time. So I was very practicing always, that's never been the case, but I was very strong in my beliefs. I was, very proud to be Sunni at the time and very much, trying to propagate that.
So the battle with yourself in this case,
yes.
How did you fight and how did you win?
Well, I mean, it was the evidence winning. I had to be honest to myself, and I remember saying, this happened. This is the truth in front of my eyes. Either I'm going to be honest with myself and do something about it, or I'm going to lie to myself and just cover it up and pretend it's not there. So I think I tried to do the best thing and be honest with myself and go with what is the truth. It's not easy, not easy.
You want to say something?
Anybody else? Yes, then.
Assalamu
alaikum.
Two questions. First question was in terms of the Khalid that came after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no denying that they were Khalifas.
Yes.
And in the Imam Ali, they call it the fourth Khalifa.
Yeah.
In terms of explaining to the Sunnis, there's no doubt that the political wing of Islam started with Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. But in terms of the spirituality of our religion, went to the line of Imam Ali and Imam Hassan and Hussein and then the Imams. So how are you in terms of explaining that aspect to the Sunnis? And then the second question is in terms of what you mentioned about Quran and Sunnah compared to Quran and Ahl al-Bayt, whereas I think that part of the Hadith where if they can just understand the fact that it's Quran and Ahl al-Bayt, not the Quran and Sunnah, because Quran and Sunnah actually are one thing. Whereas the second weighty thing is the Ahl al-Bayt, which if they grasp onto, will lead them to prosperity.
Sure. In terms of the first question, remember what I said to you. The Prophet said, "Alastu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim." He says, "Do I not have authority over you?" He didn't just mention political authority. He meant political, spiritual, everything in one. So when he says that, he's saying Imam Ali alayhi salam has that same authority on the Muslims after he is gone. So he has a political authority, has a spiritual authority. In every single way he has wilaya. There's different types of wilaya, Maulana will tell you, but his wilaya is encompassing. So I think that's the way to answer that question. That it's not, the Prophet would have told us it's just spiritual then. He didn't put this condition in. Do I not have spiritual authority over you? No, he said his authority over them in a complete sense, in totality. Second question, just remind me, it was about the Hadith Thaqalain. I think you can say, let's put it in this way. Quran and Sunnah. So who do we get the Sunnah from? So we get the Sunnah from Ahl al-Bayt. With our Sunni brothers, they take it from any Tom, Dick and Harry, unfortunately, who was around the Prophet, and don't question them, because they believe in Adalat al-Sahaba, that all the companions are just, whereas I think our way is a lot more nuanced, that we check the history of somebody. Was he a good person? How was his actions towards Ahlul Bayt? How did they die? And I think we're a lot more cautious, because at the end of the day, when you take your religion from somebody, you're taking the most important thing from them. So you should be 100% convinced in them. And I think nothing is better than taking it from a Ma'soom. You can't go wrong.
And give this mic to the ladies section. I believe some sisters have some questions. Yes, please, sister. The mic is coming. Oh. And sisters, after that we will provide you the email from our wife. If anyone have like the questions, so you can ask her on the email. If some personal questions or something. So if there is a regular question, you can ask. Yes, please.
So my question is that when you were doing your research, were there any specific books or resources that you used that helped you?
So when I was doing my journey, that's a really good question. So I mentioned, I think, And Then I Was Guided, which I really recommend to everybody to read, because it's just an amazing story. And also in the book, the evidences and proofs that, the person who wrote the book saw, mentioned also stories when he's interacting with Sunni scholars and Shia scholars. Shabi Peshawar, I mentioned Peshawar Nights. There's another book called Al-Muraja'at. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It's a dialogue between Sayyid Sharfuddin al-Musawi, who was a famous scholar from Lebanon, and the Mufti from Al-Azhar. So I would really recommend that. It's more of an intellectual book, so this is more if you've got past And Then I Was Guided, which is more of like a story it's told, and you want something more in detail. And there's also Ma'as Sadiqeen, To Be With the Truthful, also by Muhammad Tijani, which I would highly recommend you to read. I'd also recommend you to actually go out and just look at the hadiths that we've talked about here. The narrations from the books of Ahl Sunnah, read them for yourself so you know that they're there. that we're not making things up, and in what context they are. The books that I mentioned, if anybody wants them, I do have PDFs of them available, so if you do, then come see me after the program and I can help you out with that. And lastly, not reading, but there was a really good documentary made around, it's been over 20 years ago approximately, called Karbala, When Skies Wet Blood. Has anybody ever seen that? Yeah? I would really recommend you all to watch that, because that's really moving, and I remember watching that as a Sunni, Karbala, When Skies Wet Blood, and it really sways you emotionally in terms of what happened after the Prophet, and it goes all the way to what happened to Imam Hussain. I hope that answers the question.
Anybody else? That's all? Okay, so that's fine.
We have a question here.
One last question.
Assalamu alaikum. So earlier you were mentioning obviously the second Khalifa and his views on Taraweeh.
Yeah.
Now one question I had about that is, obviously we can conclude from that we shouldn't do anything that the Prophet hasn't told us to do. Essentially, when the Prophet has completed our religion, we should finalize that. So my question was, obviously us as Shias, we believe in Matam. Are there any hadiths from the Prophet or other prophets you could quote us which would justify Matam to a Sunni? Because I know that's something that Sunnis don't believe in.
First of all, let's make something clear. Matam is not compulsory. What is something that we're encouraged to do, and which is very important in the religion, is the aza, the grief, the remembering Imam Hussain. How somebody chooses to do that, that's entirely up to them. In terms of how to produce the permissibility of doing Matam or Lakhmiya, any different terms for it, well, you can read the Quran that Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam cried until his eyes went blind for Nabi Yusuf, and he didn't even pass away. And I think it's pretty extreme to cry to the extent where your eyes go blind. You have another verse of the Quran where the wife of Ibrahim alayhi salam slaps her face. Again, form of grief. You have narrations within the books of Ahl Sunnah where the wife of the Prophet, Aisha, in mourning for the Holy Prophet, is slapping her face, is beating her chest. And I told you earlier that you have the Prophet ﷺ crying for Imam Hussain before he's even passed away. So I think we can conclude that grieving, mourning, whichever way you do it, every culture has its own way, is definitely something that's there. And the biggest proof, because a lot of people have an issue with grieving for more than 3 days. That's one point that's raised commonly, and I think you can mention here that there was the year of Huzn, the year of grief for the Prophet. Has anybody heard of this? When Abu Talib and Khadija, alayhimus salam, Amul Huzn. So if mourning is only for 3 days, why did the Prophet mourn for a year? Is he doing something wrong? Obviously not, because he's the Prophet. So you can use these kind of arguments. But remember, this is something in practice. The main things you want to tackle are the beliefs. Once you get past the beliefs, and somebody's accepted those, then it's easier to tackle the issues of practice.
Assalamu alaikum. So there is a question from a sister. She's asking that there is so much growth despite Sunnis having so many discrepancies in the faith. There's so much growth. There's so many people are becoming Sunni. So what is it that we're missing that people aren't becoming Shias at that rate?
Good question. Again, from what I've seen, Shiism is growing at such a rapid rate actually. In every part of the world, whether that's in Pakistan, whether that's in Africa, whether that's in Europe, whether that's in North America, in the Middle East. Now, obviously they're the majority. I know we mentioned earlier that they're 80 to 85%, we're 15 to 20%. So naturally, when most people convert to Islam, they're going to convert to Sunni Islam, and also the financing, the propaganda, the petrodollars from the Middle East, certainly for the last 40, 50 years, makes that even much so. What we need to do, I think where we're lacking as a Shia community, we don't actually do that much tabligh. Our efforts mostly are just focused on Shia-Sunni polemics at the most. We don't go out there and try and actually do tabligh to people, especially with non-Muslims. This is where we're really lacking, and that's not just here in Canada or in America, that's everywhere in the world. This is a problem that we have. I think the best person who did a really good job at this was Hajj Hassanein Rajab Ali. Maybe some of you are familiar with him, when he used to have debates with atheists, when he used to have debates with Christians. And I think that's somewhere where we need to really focus more. And you guys live in Canada, most of the people are non-Muslim here. How many of them have you actually tried to engage to? You know, when you have something, you have gold, you all have gold in your hand, something worth more than gold, you should want to share it with other people. You don't want to keep it to yourself. So we have the most precious gift and we need to try and share it with other people. And if we do that, inshallah, we can bring more people to the faith.
Jazakallah. There's one more question. So when you first converted, how did you feel about following Maraji and what made you,
So let's clarify here. We're talking about taqleed. Nice question. Always the marja question gets mentioned, I think, in every center in the world. Good job nobody asked me who's my marja. That's the other one. Look, taqleed is something that comes much later. I think when somebody becomes Shia, you've got to solidify your beliefs. But it made sense to me following the marja because if you want to seek medical advice, you would naturally go to a doctor who's an expert in that field. And I'm sure none of you would put your health in an amateur's hands on the street. Therefore, when seeking advice for religious matters, with namaz, with hajj, or with any other matter, then you're going to have to go with somebody who spent time and studied that. Yeah, taqleed, I mean, is there within Ahlul Sunnah as well. They do taqleed to 4 madhabs, Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, Hanbali, so I was already familiar with that, and I think it makes more sense to make taqleed somebody who's actually living. Remember, you're only doing taqleed in fiqh. In belief, you can't do taqleed. You need to be sure and make your own mind up. So yeah, I think it made pretty good sense. And of course, I'm going to tell you, Ayatollah Sistani is the best marja in the world.
I don't want to do that because my question is very childish and I'm feeling very... We're all children.
Yes, actually, the question is very paradoxical. You were Sunni, you were given name Umar Farooq,
yes.
And you studied a lot, and you just came to conclusion that the Hazrat Umar. And you are now you have become follower Janab Sayyid, Hazrat Fatima.
Yes.
And you carry the name of most controversial person.
Yes, good question.
So it's very paradoxical for me. I'm a little bit confused. In fact, in the morning I was talking to one of my friends. So I was talking to my friend. I said one guy is coming. He's Sunni but he's very educated person. So he said Umar Farooq is going to convince you that Umar Farooq was wrong. I said
good question. Good question. So actually, Shabab bhai, I know the answer. Actually, the same question I asked him in the card. But let's see.
So I'm going to answer this question in a multiple ways. First of all, let's tackle with regards to the name. First of all, Al-Faruq is not actually the title for Umar. It was given wrongly to him. Because Imam Ali says, Ana Faruq al-A'zam wa Ana Siddiq al-Akbar. And I can give you the reference, this is in Musnad Ahmad, Sunni books, where he says, I am As-Siddiq, the most truthful, and I am Al-Faruq, the distinguisher between right and wrong. This title, As-Siddiq, was given later to the first Khalifa. This is something that the Prophet didn't say. And the traditions where they try and justify it, not authentic. And same for Al-Faruq. In terms of the name Umar, there was many Umars in the time of the Holy Prophet. Salama had a son called Umar, for example. So sometimes people say, oh well, why did the Imams call their children the names Abu Bakr, Umar, Osman, if they had problems with them? Well, first of all, Abu Bakr is not a name. Abu Bakr is a kunya. His name was Abdullah ibn Abi Quhafa. Umar was a name many people had. Of course, Abu Jahl. What was his name? Umar ibn Hisham. Yeah? Uthman. Why did Imam Ali call his son Uthman? Not after Uthman ibn Affan. There's a tradition in Bihar and Anwar where he actually mentions, I have named this son Uthman after my companion Uthman ibn Maz'un, who was with him at Siffin. If the name, there are companions of the Imam al-Sadiq. Muawiyah bin Wahab, one of the narrators in Al-Kafi. Muawiyah bin Wahab